Morning guys, gals. Just gonna do a quick video this morning, Thursday morning, down on the south coast, and as you can see, it's quite a nice day out. Just having cappuccino and a roll up. I know I'm meant to be stopping smoking, but it is first thing in the morning that I really need one. But like I say, I'm working on that. I've stopped everything else, so possibly smoking is one of the worst things you can do. Smoking tobacco, because it causes cancer. So yeah, I've got to get that sorted out. So the video. I just want to do a quick one. A little bit about myself and my family, a bit of family history, really, because I haven't really told you much about that. I did do another podcast on another channel when I first came onto YouTube, and mentioned a little bit about my family and where we're from and stuff like that, but I'll go into that now a bit more. My mum and dad, they're from, my dad's from Battersea, and my mum is from Clapham, and they're basically from around that sort of area, Clapham, Battersea, Stockwell, and obviously I still have quite a few relations, a few relatives that still live in Stockwell, on Stockwell Park Estate, and various other places around that area, Kennington, Clapham, etc. So yeah, let's go back. So my parents, they've been married for many years, like 60 years. They got married young, had their children young, and that's what people did in those days, after the war. I've got two sisters and a brother. I'm very close to my family, and back then, my family, my mum and dad, when they got married, they lived in my nan's flat on the William Bonney estate in Clapham, which is one of the old tenement estates, the old blocks of flats, brick built flats that were built after World War One, at the Clapham end of Acre Lane. So yeah, they lived there. My dad, he had a nice brand new Mark II Jaguar. Yeah, lovely car, white with leather interior, red leather interior, beautiful car. And when I was very little, we moved from Clapham to Streatham Vale, near Norbury, London Road, Norbury, just round the corner from Mary Millington's sex shop, which was the first sex shop in London, outside of Soho. The family, on my dad's side, my granddad was a baker. He worked in a bakery in Lavender Hill, down that way in Clapham, and he came from a large family, 5 brothers and 2 sisters, and my dad's brother, my uncle, who I was close to, who's still alive, and most of his brothers, apart from my uncle Alan, have since passed away, and my uncle Alan, he done a reform school down in near Portslade, near Brighton, when he was a kid. The old man done a ball stall, back in the day, and like I say, they moved from my nan's flat to Streatham Vale, Norbury, to a little house there, and that's where some of my earliest memories are from, and my nan, You know, she eventually got rehoused from the William Bonney estate to an estate in Crystal Palace, Gypsy Hill, and there's some of my earliest best memories, you know, going up to my nan's to the estate there, and every Christmas as a treat for the estate kids at Crystal Palace, um, we would go up to Fairfield Halls on a double-decker bus, you know, the old double-decker bus, and see a pantomime every year at Christmas and get a bag of sweets. So, you know, that was a good treat, because you've got to remember, you know, after World War Two, and during World War Two, when my parents were born, people were very poor. You know, my dad, you know, I remember him telling me he used to have to go to school sometimes with no shoes at all, and for Christmas, what he got for Christmas was an apple and an orange. A bit different from now, where the kids get iPhones and cars and all sorts of stuff, you know. So the world has changed a lot, you know. I still remember in the 1970s where half of London was still bombed out 30 years after World War Two, you know. And on my mum's side of the family, you know, my granddad, who we used to call Farvey, sadly he died of cancer 30 years ago. Um, and I'd just come out of prison, so luckily I did get to go to see him before he died and go to the funeral. Um, he was in World War Two. He was a Marine in World War Two, and he was in India uh, when he was captured in India for a while, and then he was sent to Burma, and he was captured in Burma as well, you know, and eventually he got home, you know, and you know, he got a few medals and stuff. So yeah, he was a decorated soldier in World War Two, and he was a Marine, my granddad, yeah. And yeah, he liked to drink, my granddad. You know, he was a painter and decorator. My mum's sister and a lot of my family were all what is known as costermongers. And costermongers were market traders, but specifically market traders that would sell anything. But my uncle, on my mum's side, my Uncle Dickie, he sold fruit and veg, and he had a fruit and veg shop down Wandsworth Road, behind just by Parry's, the big scrap metal yard down that way. And I had some good memories going to work with him as a kid, helping out in the greengrocers, you know, going to New Covent Garden at Nine Elms. You know, although he did used to go and get his stock at the original Covent Garden, but you know, that was before my time. It closed down uh, in the 60s, and Nine Elms, New Covent Garden, opened in the late 60s, early 70s. So yeah, really good memories. My nan, um, whose name, whose maiden name was Rainbow. You know, a lot of my family are the Rainbows. That's their actual name, is Rainbow, and all from Clapham. But originally, her nan was a Romany gypsy, and so I do have a little bit of gypsy heritage. Um, my nan's nan was born in a wagon, a gypsy wagon, you know, one of those old wooden painted wagons, lovely things. Uh, I think it was on a site in Battersea. Obviously, this would have been pre World War One, you know, and my cousin David, he at my granddad's funeral, when he was doing the eulogy, he had traced the family history, and my nan, whose name was Sparrowhawk, which is a Romany gypsy name, Sparrowhawk. You know, there's the Sparrowhawk scrapyard in Mitcham and Epsom, and I don't know if they're still there now, but yeah, he traced their history, my nan's history, and they came from Romania a few hundred years ago, and also I looked into the family tree on my dad's side as well, and they came into the country possibly about over 200 years ago, um, arriving on a boat at Portsmouth, and since then they were in the records down as Black's Farriers. Now, Black's Farrier isn't a blacksmith. Black's Farrier is somebody that just shoes horses, So I'd imagine they'd go round to the various people and just shoe the horses, or go to racetracks like Epsom Downs and shoe horses and stuff like that. And I love family history. It's very interesting stuff. And as you know, my name is Cumper. Very unusual name, and most of the Cumpers I know in this country are actually relatives of mine. And also there's the different spelling with 1P, and possibly they're relatives of mine as well. But yeah. So that's a little bit about the family history. So yeah, like I was saying, my mum and dad moved from the William Bonney estate in Clapham to Norbury, Streatham Vale there, in London Road, Southwest 16, and we was there for a few years, and then by the time I was 5, we moved. My dad managed to buy a little semi-detached house in London Borough of Sutton. It was called Sutton, Surrey, but it was actually part of London, Greater London, since 1966. So we moved there, and that's where I went to school, Barrow Hedges, and the area we lived in was quite middle class. We didn't live on a council estate. It was a private house, semi-detached house, and my dad was a painter and decorator, and done quite a bit of building work, and he done lots of work on the house because it was pretty run down when we moved in to it, and he made it really nice. And a lot of people used to think we was rich when I was a kid, people at school and other kids, but that definitely wasn't the case. Don't get me wrong, we never went without food or clothes or anything like that, but we certainly wasn't rich. But one of the reasons being that people thought we were rich is because we had a swimming pool in the back garden. But the case with the swimming pool was what it was. My dad, he had a mate that had a lot of plant material, and he borrowed, a digger, an earth mover. He borrowed one of those, and he dug a big hole in the garden, and actually built the swimming pool himself. It wasn't heated or anything, but it still was very nice, and really nice and relaxing in the hot summers of the 1970s and 80s. So yeah. So yeah, and actually it was a semi-detached house, and we didn't get on with the neighbours, the people on the other side of the wall. The lady there, Mrs. Withers, was actually very good friends with the headmistress of the school I went to, Barrow Hedges, and obviously she didn't like us for some reason, obviously because we were working class, and the other people in our street and the surrounding streets tended to be people like people that worked in banks or stockbrokers and that sort of thing, and we used to call them poshos. I remember going up to kids and saying, "Hello, posho, how are you doing, posho?" And obviously they didn't like us for that reason, so I actually got dug out at school cruel to a 5, 6 year old kid. You know, it's beyond me. But there you go. That's sort of what it was like. You know, we were sort of like, like EastEnders. We were sort of like the Taylors, you know, the family that everybody hated, you know, that just moved into the square. You know, I used to get called names like Common Ped, you Common Ped, you know. I mean, these people, these kids, it wasn't a private school, it was just a state school, you know, but because it was in a middle class area, obviously a lot of them thought they were better than what they were, and it was still the class system back in those days, you know. I used to get called Fashion Doll, was another one, because I will say that we always had nice, fashionable clothes, and because my parents were young, very young parents, they followed the fashion, you know. I remember seeing other kids, a lot of the other kids, their parents used to come and pick them up from school, you know, to drive them home or walk them home. And I used to think it was their grandparents, you know, they were so old. But, you know, that's how it was then. You know, in the working classes, people usually had their kids from the age of 16 onwards, you know, because my mum, she was a housewife, and also she done other jobs as well, you know, on top of running a house with a family of 6, you know. So she worked very hard. And obviously, my dad, he was a bit of a rogue, you know, in a good way, I'd say. He was a bit of a rogue, and he was a painter and decorator, amongst other things. But also, he did run a couple of clubs. He was the steward and the secretary, so he's basically in control of the British Legion at Belmont. And I think I've mentioned that before, you know, because years later, when in the 80s, late 80s and early 90s, when High Down and Downview opened, a lot of the screws used to go in there for a drink. So my dad would butter them up and give them like baccy or whatever, give them a load of baccy or whatever to sneak into me to the prison, you know, so I was well looked after there, you know. And yeah, so where was we? So yeah, I went through, I got a lot of crap from the teachers at, at Barrow Hedges at the primary school, my first school, and I remember I was always getting sent into the corridor for so-called bad behaviour, or whatever, you know, answering a question without putting my hand up, and then you get sent into the corridor for that and have to stand with your face against the wall. And I do remember on a number of occasions I'd go out for my punishment to stand in the corridor, and my older sister would already be out there standing against the wall as well. So it obviously wasn't just me in the family that was getting dug out. It was all of us, you know. So there you go. So yeah, I was quite good at school, the academic stuff. But although I did, my main thing I was into was the sports, and we done football, and the headmaster was also the PE teacher there, and he didn't like me either. So you know, I think I did manage to get into the football team, but you know, it was difficult. What with me being not liked by a lot of the teachers, and also, you know, I did used to get into a lot of trouble for um, fighting and stuff. I remember having quite a few fights at school. I think I remember my first fight at school was when I was about 7 or 8. You know, I'd be fighting with other kids, you know, and that went on uh, for a few years, you know. And when it got to uh, time to go to secondary school, we had something called the 11 plus. The 11 plus, I'm sure I passed. I wanted to go to grammar school because that was a big thing back then for working class kids like us to be able to get into a grammar school. You know, it was, you know, I wanted to go to Wilson's Grammar School, but obviously I didn't get in there. They said I wasn't suitable, and I went to the same school as my brother, Stanley Park, which was one of the worst schools in the borough of Sutton, you know. And I remember going there on my first day and having a fight with someone to see who the hardest was in the first day, because at Stanley Park it wasn't about learning there, it was all about who was the hardest at fighting in the school, you know. And luckily I had my brother there, because a lot of people did want to pick on me at school, you know, a lot of older kids, you know. I was 11 and getting picked on by 15, 16-year-old kids, you know. And luckily I had an older brother, and he was one of the hardest in the school, Mark. And luckily he got rid of a few of the bullies for me, you know, because they was terrified of him. And one of his friends was Brian Eve. And sadly, Brian Eve, when he left school, I think he was only 17 or 18, he just left school, and he got stabbed to death outside the Blackwater pub in Sutton. And my sister used to drink there after work, you know, and she was there when that happened. Sadly, I know the guy did get caught, foreign guy, I think he was an Arab or something, and yeah, he served his life sentence, and I'm pretty sure he's out now. But Brian, yeah, he was a good guy, one of the hardest in the school. So was my brother, and also was Anthony McCammon, and he had a brother and sister. His sister Wendy used to hang around with my sister Sam, and he had a brother called Dinsdale, and yeah, Anthony was all right. And also you had Steve Springer, and he got a big bit of bird when he was 16, and you know, and ended up going to YP for a few years, you know. And like I say, by the time I was in the, I think I was in the third year, I got expelled for fighting because I stabbed somebody in the neck. It's not as bad as it seems, because I didn't stab them with a sharp knife. I stabbed them in the throat with, you know, the knife and fork, you know, the knife that you eat your food with. So a blunt instrument, you know. But obviously I got into a lot of trouble over that. And also there was a lot of trouble over me not being able to box in the Southern Counties ABAs. I'd won the Surrey County ABAs and South West London ABA championships, but when it come to the next stage, Southern Counties at Hastings, and I'd already beaten this kid before, you know, so it would have been a pretty easy fight. But the day before that fight, the PE teacher, and I did used to be quite close to him because I was good at athletics and you know, the 100 meters, 200 meters, and I was really good at the long jump as well. And I was in the school football team, and I was pretty good at football as well, you know. Actually, football was my main sport that I was into before I got into boxing. You know, I didn't start boxing until I was about 11, 12. So basically, yeah, the night before the fight at Hastings for the Southern Counties ABA, I was up the park. We used to sneak out of school at lunchtime because, you know, school dinners was shit. We used to sneak out and go and get Savoy and chips or something up the local chip shop up the road from the school, and then we go into Stanley Park and in the park there, and possibly eat our fish and our Savoy and chips or sausage and chips or whatever, and then have a fag afterwards, you know. But at the time I did start smoking, first of all, you know, because I had an older brother when I was 8, but then I stopped a couple of years later, you know, when I got heavily into the boxing, so I wasn't actually smoking, but the PE teacher, he was always trying to catch us out, Mr. Francis, and he had followed us up to the park and caught us all in the park, you know, and it was a case of, right, you got detention tonight, you know, after school, I want to see you all in the gymnasium for detention. If you don't show, I'm going to write to your parents and all that sort of stuff, you know. You know, and at the time, I wasn't completely out of control then. I was still following the rules, you know, and trying to behave myself. So basically, all the other kids were turning up for the detention, so I decided to go with them as well and turn up for the detention. So what happened? Basically, we changed into our PE kit and we're in the gymnasium, and the punishment was bunny hops. Yes, we had to do bunny hop circuits from the outside wall of the gym, and it's quite a big gymnasium it was at Stanley Park. We had to do constant bunny hops for 2 hours, and that's not a lie, 2 hours, you know, and afterwards I could barely walk, you know, it was hard just to walk home. So yeah, I got home and, you know, had my tea and went straight to bed, knowing full well that I had the boxing fight in the morning. So the minibus came in the morning to take me down, Don, come round to the house in the minibus to take me down to Hastings for the Southern Counties ABA. And basically what happened was I could barely walk, and I was sort of moaning on the way, you know, I don't feel well, telling Don about, you know, the detention, and my legs were aching, and he was saying, you'll be all right, you've beaten this guy before, you've got no problems, you know. And yeah, so basically we've got down to Hastings, and I'm in the dressing room ready for the fight, you know, and basically it's just worse, it's getting worse, you know, I could barely stand up. So basically, you know, I said to John, one of the other guys from Rosehill, I said to John, look, I don't think I can fight, I can barely stand up. And he said, look, you've already beaten this guy before, you'll beat him easy, just fight, you know, just do it. And I really didn't feel well, really didn't feel up for it. I was all hot and all that, you know, felt terrible. The pain in my legs was severe, and I pulled out the fight, basically, you know, and basically, you know, if I'd had that fight and won, I would have been in the ABA finals. So yeah, there you go. And after that, yeah, I was very angry. It made me very angry at school. I got my dad writ me a letter to Stanley Park, to the headmaster saying, and the PE teacher saying, I will no longer be participating in PE, in physical education whatsoever, you know, because of what happens with that. And then after that, really, I totally just went wild, you know, in school, you know, like I say, the next fight I had, I stabbed someone in the neck in the dining room in front of all the teachers. And when they were looking at me after doing that, I remember shouting at them, oh, what are you fucking looking at? And threw a few tables over at them as well, you know, so yeah. And then I just walked out of school. After that, I was meant to go to Farney Close, which would have been a version of an approved school, you know, like a boarding school it was, you know, and basically I left home and moved into a squat up the road, you know, rather than go to boarding school, although they did offer me Garden Hall, which was a special school in Sutton by Sutton Library, where you didn't actually do any work there, you just played pool all day, you know, and smoked fags and whatever, you know. So, but by that time I'd left home and had moved into the squat in Stanley Park Road. And I remember I used to look out the window and see my mates walking home from school and stuff like that, you know, and that was the start of my drug career, you know, and stuff like that, you know. But like I say, when it comes to crime and that, I had been doing crime, small crime since the age of 8. You know, I used to sell raffle tickets, you know, and for say I was collecting for the Diamond Riding Centre or whatever, and keep the money, you know. So not very nice, robbing off charities and that. But yeah, I was only a kid, but I wasn't an official collector. But what had happened was I knew someone that did officially collect for the Diamond Riding Centre, and they had a letter of approval. So I stole that letter, you know, bought some books of raffle tickets, and sold the tickets at 50p each all around the neighbourhood, and made up a fruit basket, you know, then wicker baskets, and put loads of fruit in it and some cellophane over the top and a bow, and made it look really nice. And that was the winning prize. So actually, you know, uh, the people did actually win a prize for the raffle, but the fact was that the money didn't actually go to the Diamond Riding Centre, it went into my pocket, you know. And I do remember uh, counting out all this money on the street corner up near where I lived, and there'd be piles and piles of 50p pieces and stuff, you know, because you didn't have pound coins back then. You know, this is 1978, and of course we used to do penny for the guy as well. You know, and all the local poshos used to look down on us for that. You know, because they used to see that as begging and stuff. You know, so very different times back then. You know, you had your working class, your middle class, and your upper classes. You know, and we was definitely working class, and I'm glad uh, that I was a working class kid, you know, because I'll be honest with you, you know, uh, there's no way I would have wanted to have been middle